Welcome back to Andre the Podcast here on The Roar. I had the opportunity to talk to Kevin Gaiss. He is a morning reporter for CBS affiliate WCAX TV in Burlington, Vermont. Kevin spoke with me about landing his first job in TV news right after college, and he also gave some really good advice to those of us going into the journalism industry. Take a listen. We are with Kevin Gaiss. He is a reporter with WCAX, the CBS affiliate in Burlington, Vermont. He joins us today to talk about some of the things that he's learned as a journalist and what you all can learn from him as well. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Andre. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. This is a major opportunity to talk with someone like yourself. I'm in college. You just sort of left college and you just got your first job working in television news. That's big. What has the experience been like for you so far?
Yeah, so it's been an absolutely wild experience. So I graduated, kind of just disappeared in the middle of the pandemic, and ended up landing a job sort of right at that beginning of the pandemic period. And it was just sort of pick up, move what you could, and then just sort of pick everything up on the mask wearing up here. So it was a wild ride. And I think that had it not been such a crazy experience right off the bat, I think it would have been a whole lot different. And in a weird way, it has been, I think, a little beneficial to the start of my career to start at such a weird time for journalism, but also for the whole world.
Absolutely. I was just about to ask, how challenging was it for you to actually start a job in the middle of a pandemic where you really weren't seeing anyone and you were kind of doing things maybe on your own?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right off the bat, even just starting out at a station that had just sort of learned how to be remote. I mean, all of the reporters who were my mentors at the time were sort of relearning how to do their profession because they were working from home, or they were reporting via Zoom, or they were relying on a lot of file footage. They didn't know what they could and couldn't get. There were a lot of unanswered questions. So it was interesting to watch sort of all of these people, even in the station I was working in, but also stations markets ahead of mine, sort of relearn their profession. I ended up having to train sort of in a remote fashion as well. I was able to go to the station quick, pick up my equipment, and then sort of turn around and just sort of learn a lot on my own in a weird way, but take a lot of phone calls, sit on a lot of Zoom meetings. And luckily, again, in sort of a weird way, the pandemic made, I think, a lot of people really patient because everyone was sort of learning at that moment. So there was sort of an extra little bit of patience kind of swirling around teaching the new guy, which was a good thing in a way. And then from there, I sort of learned that it was okay that everybody was sort of learning together at the same time. So it almost made me feel a little bit more comfortable in the situation that I was in, and made me feel a little bit better about having to learn things in that moment. And it's made me a more confident reporter now, knowing sort of some of the hurdles I've already had to jump as the world opens up a little bit. So it's been good. I mean, it was, like you said, definitely a challenge, but I think it'll definitely continue to pay off in the years to come.
Absolutely. So that my next question actually was, I'm wondering, were you intimidated? Were you afraid being the new reporter in the building and then, having to do everything kind of on your own? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you start a new job, even I think, if and when the time comes that I jump stations, I think there's always going to be that feeling of a little bit of intimidation, a little bit of nervousness. Naturally, you're in front of a new audience. You're working for new people. You're working with new people. You sort of have that inherent feeling, especially, I think, in that first job where you go from doing it, at a college station, where you go from sort of like that practice level, let's say, up to the professional level. You can definitely feel sort of the eyes on you. You can feel sort of the pressure and understand that, there's an audience there that is going to rely on you for information now. But I think what it really came down to was, seeking guidance from those around me, especially those who had a lot more experience than me. So some of those station veterans that, were learning on the fly as well, but I think also had enough experience under their belt that they felt better about the situation that they were in. And that's something I love a lot about this profession is I have yet to really meet someone who doesn't want to help the next people up. I have yet to find people who sort of turn away younger journalists and say, like, no, I don't want to help you. It's a lot of people, even at my own station, as well as, in stations I've reached out to or had contact with, that just want to help. And everybody, it's a very tight-knit profession, which really makes the transition periods a lot easier.
Absolutely. I just finished a class focusing on TV news writing and reporting. And my professor, who actually is going back into the industry, was telling us that one thing about the newsroom is that you're going to know everyone and that you're going to have like some type of bond with everyone in the newsroom in some type of way.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I have my morning team that I work with every single morning. I don't even really, I went from calling them a team to more so calling them a family now. I have in 2 years gotten incredibly close with them despite a few moving parts here and there, but they really are like my family. I mean, you spend a lot of really long days. There are a lot of emotional stories that happen over time, and you work on some really tough details, or you find some really awesome, exciting, upbeat stories that you get to tell too, and it really draws you closer. And it is one of those professions where you have to sort of be able to bond with people naturally and really sort of feel connected to the people that you're talking to just for stories. But then when you sort of translate that into the newsroom, the people who are helping you tell those stories, it does sort of create a very special connection between you and everybody that's around you, which is an incredibly rewarding feeling on the really good days and an incredibly reassuring feeling on the harder days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I learned some fun facts doing some research about you before we, started talking. So as we talked about, you are, you just got your first job straight out of college. That's huge. But you also got the opportunity to work for CBS This Morning, known as CBS Mornings now. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was an absolutely incredible internship. I got the chance to work for the CBS internship program the summer of, that was 2019. So headed into my senior year of college, I got accepted into the internship program, got placed with CBS. At the time, it was CBS This Morning, so now CBS Mornings. And that was just an absolutely unbelievable experience. I mean, CBS, similar to local newsrooms, all of their different shows and all of their different departments have a very close-knit feeling. They all really have sort of tight bonds as well. CBS as a network has sort of an incredible legacy to it. So being able to sort of go into the station, learn some of the legacy, learn some of the people who have been there for a ton of years, and some of the people that are going to be carrying that legacy for years to come was something that I will absolutely never forget. I mean, it was close to the point where I got to play for the softball team for CBS This Morning at the time over the summer. And we were playing teams like the Today Show or CBSN when they were launching. So it was kind of just a really good chance to see how the network level operates. Also to learn in sort of like sessions, a really good chance to sort of learn a whole bunch about what network news looks like, as well as learn from really strong industry professionals like David Begnaud, like Steve Hartman, like Gail King and Tony DeCopel and Anthony Mason, as he was still there. The opportunity for education was really endless when I was there, and it really was one of those situations that you really just had to take such strong advantage of being around incredible journalistic minds and just suck in as much as you possibly could.
Absolutely. I'll say that's been a challenge for me. Like even getting an internship, I'm working on that now. I'm a junior. And this pandemic has made that so difficult. You know, when the world closed down, they didn't really want anyone, to come, into their buildings, and trying to do it virtually, presented a challenge. So it's still difficult. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, I knowing sort of even just watching some of my classmates out of college, like I said, I was incredibly lucky to sort of see, people. I was lucky to get a job myself. I was lucky to see some of my classmates get jobs, but not long after, a lot of businesses and companies and newsrooms really closed their doors, and to a lot of people just to be like, hey, we can't have people coming in and out, like we used to, and it really has been a tough period, I think, and I really do sort of feel bad for, the classes below me because they just didn't have those same experiences. They didn't have the same opportunities that I had to, learn a lot of these things. And that, I think overall, I think your classes will likely be stronger because of it. If you folks, feel ambitious and really choose that as an opportunity to sort of light a fire in your gut and be like, I will not be deterred. I want to learn. I think that'll be really strong. But at the same time, a lot of education when it comes to journalism is practice. And a lot of it is, watching it get done professionally. At least that was the experience I had. So for sure, I would say, be super persistent, when it comes to trying to land one of those internships, because you will learn a ton from it. But, in the meantime, a lot of watching news, a lot of reading news, a lot of, deconstructing it on your own time and figuring out why certain things work, why certain things don't, I think will be incredibly beneficial to your time as well.
Absolutely. I not to brag here. This is a funny thing that I wanted to discuss with you. So we've been in my classes, we've been working on packages, how to write a VOSOT, how to write a SOT, how to add a NAT pop, all of that. And I feel like I'm pretty good at it, but I want to still improve on it, of course. And what's one of the things that you would say makes making packages for you for your stories maybe easier or challenging?
Okay, yeah. I guess it depends on what the piece is. I personally like the style of really interweaving and letting the characters that I have for my story and letting the experts that I have for my story tell the story. So I'm not the type to sort of have long tracks and then quick SOTs. I like to sort of really balance the piece between SOTs and writing. I think that there's incredible value in sort of choosing the words that you choose to put in the package very carefully, and then allowing the people that you've chosen to be a part of that story really tell the story, if that makes sense. So, instead of having just a quick top SOT or a quick top NAT and then just explain, with detail what you're talking about, and then just bring in one expert for a quick 15-second bite, and then more track, and then one more 15-second sound bite, and then finish it off. Like that to me almost feels more like a tracked VOSOT at some point. So I really like to sort of interweave the characters I have. Good writing is something that is incredibly difficult to master, and something that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. And, I think it'll be probably another decade, 2 decades before I would consider myself sort of mastering the craft of TV news writing. But at the same time, I think that finding your own style and finding your own voice when it comes to journalism really only benefits the audience in the long run, because they learn to sort of appreciate your own version, and they don't feel like they're getting bogged down by watching and hearing the same things over and over and over again. They sort of can identify your work very quickly, or, on their own. So I think it's just one of those things that takes a ton of practice, and I don't think you can really undervalue how much, practice makes perfect in this situation.
Absolutely. Has there been a story so far that you've, wrote that has stood out to you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a personal favorite of mine that I have told, and I always that leads me into a separate sort of point, but it was basically the story of a young girl that she's 11 years old, or she was 11 years old at the time, who had an untreatable and unnamed disease. And she had an absolute passion for firefighters and fire trucks and firefighting. And she has an incredibly close bond with the local fire department up here where she lives. And basically, right around the same time she was spending a ton of time down in Boston at the hospital, the fire department was getting a new fire truck, and they decided to name it Addie's Engine in honor of her. And so one of the times she had come back to Vermont, she actually was able to see her truck for the first time. And I was able to sort of combine, video and pictures that, the fire department had captured with some of my own interactions with Addie and her mom, as well as the chief of the fire department, who has sort of you can tell just by, watching the two of them interact, the little girl and the fire chief, just how tight of a bond that they have. And it was just one of those stories that, I didn't even have to write a lot. It just sort of told itself in a way. And you could sort of let the sound and let the interviews sort of speak for themselves. All I had to do was sort of add the context. And when it came, that part was easy. Just adding the build up, adding the lead up, and then sort of adding in a twist right in the middle was sort of, the beauty of it. And it just came out, in a way that I don't think I would have been able to match if I had, forced myself to add like facts, or forced myself to add, anything that didn't really feel necessary. So I was incredibly proud of the way it came out. But that sort of leads me into a separate point, which is I always wonder what it would have looked like if I had gotten that story now, because this was a year and a half ago that I told that story. So I always wonder what would have happened now that I have 2 years under my belt, or I wonder what would have happened if, I get that story 10 years down the line. And it sort of always is going to bother me a little bit that such a rich and strong story came by my plate when I was still so green as a reporter. But I've also sort of accepted the fact that, that's going to happen for the rest of my career. There are going to be stories that come across my plate that, I don't know if it's the opportune time to tell them, but it is the right time to tell them. And I just have to do the absolute best I can in the moment that they come across my plate.
Absolutely. That's a very powerful story. Very powerful indeed. My interview with Kevin Gaiss continues after this break. Stay with us.
Now back to the show on The Roar.
What made you decide, or when did you figure out that you wanted to go into the journalism industry?
Yeah, so there was sort of 2 points for my life that sort of pushed me into what I wanted to do. When I was probably about 13 or 14, I learned that I wanted to do something in the television production field. At the time, I thought it was going to be sports. I thought I really wanted to do sports. I was watching Sports Center and Sports Nation every day, and I thought for sure that was going to be my career path. As I sort of did a lot of sports, was incredibly fortunate to be a part of that. I learned that sports weren't necessarily my niche. I decided that it wasn't quite for me. And then when I was a sophomore in high school, the Newtown shooting happened in Newtown, Connecticut. And I just remember how much that rattled my community. I live probably about 35, 40 minutes from there. So to sort of watch a major news event like that happen and really just, absolutely rip apart the heart of a state when so many little kids died in an instant like that, but to watch the journalists, the local reporters on TV every single day, for the better part of the day, I mean, they were doing cut-ins constantly with more information. Just to watch them keep sort of their composure and really just, be this really strong pillar for the community to make sure that they were getting good information out there and that the community could trust them in such a really dark and terrifying moment. I felt really inspired in that moment to sort of watch those reporters, a lot of them either, a couple markets in, probably in their 30s, 40s, they were clearly visually very rattled and also expressing a ton of empathy for the families and for the situation, while at the same time doing an incredible job. That is something that I think will forever be ingrained into the back of my mind. And is really sort of at the foundation of what I want my career to be about. And that's about empathy and getting good information out to the world and sort of balancing the two of those things as I sort of work my way through such a demanding and difficult profession. Those were really the 2 points that sort of, I would say, forged my career. Sort of learning that I wanted to be in TV production, but then really honing that in a very, very dark moment for the state that I grew up in, but then also, news at large. I mean, there are chapters in books, that reporters have written. Scott Pelley has an entire chapter in his book, A Truth Worth Telling, about Newtown. So to sort of see a situation like that or an event like that make it all the way from the local stations I was watching up to the networks and be ingrained in those reporters' minds is sort of something that I will definitely carry with me all the way through my career.
Absolutely. And you made a very good point that I thought was worth mentioning. What motivates you every day to keep going in this business? Because I know for a lot of people who are journalists, it can be demanding and it can be too much for them. And some people have left the industry because it just became too much. What keeps you going every day?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think it's constant growth that's keeping me going. There is sort of that underlying feeling, that and reminder that you have to sort of keep pushing yourself, knowing that you are in your gut and your heart trying to do something good for the community, for the city or the state, or multiple states that you're working in, sort of knowing that you're doing good by them and that, even if they don't necessarily like sort of the product that is being pushed out, that you really are trying to help them and trying to set them up for success in their own community. But at the moment, I think what's really keeping me going and what gets me out of bed is growth. So I think one of the best compliments that I get as a reporter, because this is my first market, is when I run into people in Vermont or in New Hampshire or upstate New York, sort of the areas that we cover, is really sort of the classic, I remember when you first started and, you weren't that good, but you've gotten a lot better. That's sort of like is to me one of the greatest compliments you can get. And or they, I've had people when I answer the phone in the newsroom who they recognize my voice or, they ask who's talking and I say it's Kevin Gaiss and they're like, oh, it's been great to watch you grow, in the past 2 years you've been here. And we've really enjoyed watching you grow and turn into a really bright young reporter. Or, we really enjoy when you're on the anchor desk or whatever it might be. But to sort of hear the validation from the community that they have enjoyed watching me grow as a person and enjoyed watching me grow as a professional, that to me is one of the most valuable things that I try to really hold on to, because it just reminds me that there is growth happening, even if I don't feel it day in and day out. There's growth happening every single day. And it's, and that sort of puts me into this check of, it's only been 2 years. You don't have to be, a network style reporter or correspondent, or, you don't have to be, a seasoned vet. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be the best writer in the world, but you do just have to keep trying. And you do just have to care about the product that you're putting out because the people in the community care about the job that I'm doing. And that to me, it's really those comments are what keep me sort of moving forward. The community that you serve needs you to do a good job, whether it's market 1 or, market 207, the community that you're working for needs you to do a good job, and they need you to, work really, really hard because you are their source of news in many cases. And of course, just to always remain humble and just understand that, it'll be a long time before, like I said, you master this craft, and sort of a long time before you have your own style and you have your own sort of like flair on TV, and you have your own sort of, persona and your own personality that you really want to get out. Like all of that is sort of built toward. So understanding going into it that it's not going to be perfect and you're going to mess up and you're going to have some rough days here and there, but those good comments will come along that remind you that you're on a journey to build a career that, down the line will likely be incredibly rewarding and will be incredibly valuable to the community that you decide to settle into, is sort of the eyes on the prize scenario. So really just keeping a strong focus on that and giving yourself a little bit of a break and really giving yourself the opportunity to mess up and the opportunity to fail will only make you better in the long run.
All right. Well, folks, this has been Kevin Gaiss with WCAX TV in Vermont. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you folks.